more, for real.
Let's go. Hey, women's hockey fans, welcome back. I mean, it's good to be back. We took a little bit of a break here. Life is gonna life, as we said before. We are back. Excited to be here for the Founding Four podcast. Angelica Rodriguez, Erica Ayala, and today we're going to talk PWHL. It's been a while. It's been a minute. We actually have some more details that we can lay out. Schedule is out. Official start date. There was an eval camp. Angelica, you were there. And the big one, we'll probably spend the most time on that tonight. The official rosters.
Yeah.
Man, oh man. So if you're watching along with us live, don't be shy. Hit us up in the comments. But Angelica, you know how we like to start? Just like what's your vibe? What's been going on in your world?
God, the vibes. I don't know. Recently, it's been a weird time. Holiday season tends to be a little bit of a weird time.
True.
But I think I'm just kind of taking it a day at a time. Keeping my head above water, working on my fitness, working on my health, working on some things, both mental and physical, working on some things for the women's hockey sphere. As some of you, probably all of you watching know, because you probably have seen me on my other platform, the Ice Garden. I have transitioned to NCAA content. So that's always a process. It's been a couple of growing pains trying to figure out how I best want to do that. So, but yeah, lots going. How about you, Edmana? Where are you at?
Yeah, I'm with you. It's been up and down, definitely focusing on overall health and wellness. Kind of needed to take a little bit of a break. So not planned, but very well needed and appreciated. So just rejiggering myself. And yeah, getting ready for, I will be calling some women's hockey games, college hockey games in Hockey East at the top of the year. So getting ready for that, getting ready for the Seattle Kraken finally broke their 8-game losing streak, and hopefully better things to come as we get ready for the Winter Classic, which I plan to be at. So the hockey's still gonna hockey, even though it looks a little different than what we thought it was gonna at this time of the year.
Absolutely. I keep getting memories on Facebook, and it's like 8 years ago today, 5 years ago today. I'm like, oh my God, stop. It's bittersweet. It's bittersweet, but it's nice to see that we still have got some pro women's hockey brewing, which we're gonna get into in just a moment here. So
yes, indeed, for sure. Okay, well, let's get to it. So we're talking Professional Women's Hockey League, PWHL. We have broken down a few things as the news has been coming out, and we know it's been a sprint to what we now know is opening weekend, which is none other than January 1st, 2024.
Yeah, January 1st, same day as the Winter Classic.
Yep.
I think there's some sort. I think college football, like the bowl games, are a big thing. At least the Rose Bowl. Yeah, not an ideal time. I can only assume that they wanted to time it with Winter Classic. From what we have heard and some people have speculated, but there has been some sort of relationship between the PWHL and the men's NHL, National Hockey League, with regard to I don't know if it's a strategic partnership. I don't know if there's money involved. According to Stan Cass and Jenna Hefford, that hasn't really gotten to that point. It's been just kind of like an advisory relationship. But even with that being said, I'm sure the PWHL scheduled, January 1st puck drop with that in mind to be able to capitalize off of, some of that. So we'll see. Again, I don't know that January 1st was really, so go ahead.
No, you were say what you were going to say, because I think we were going to say the same thing. But
January 1st. I lost my train of thought now. I didn't know that January 1st was necessarily the ideal time in general. And,
Yeah.
for a lot of the reasons that we've already covered. So,
Yeah, for sure. And I was just going to add that I was able to speak to Jana Hefford and asked her about if they thought about Winter Classic activations with Seattle. They said it was definitely on the table. But I think what ultimately it boiled down to, which should be no surprise, is that with the sprint, as I've been calling it, they were beholden to dates that worked for the venues that they knew they could use in other situations and scenarios. So there were some limitations there. I do have a story coming out, but I think it's interesting also that Jana Hefford talked to me, and I know Ian Kennedy put something out. I'm not sure if I missed another article on it, but talking about how they're going to use NHL and AHL officials. And of course, there's a lot of conversation as to why that, as opposed to IIHF, which again, we know that as this league was getting started, it was about, best on best. And a lot of those are Olympians that play for national teams. And when they play with their national teams, they're playing under IIHF rules. And so what I deduced, I guess I should say, is that because of maybe the strategic alliance partnership, whatever they're calling it, that they were, I guess, highly suggested or something to that effect. Jana told me to use AHL and NHL officials for consistency. And I think also just the pool of officials a little bit larger that they could pull from. So while I get that to an extent, that the consistency kind of it makes me scratch my head, because these officials
they're not
likely
even
have not.
in the NHL.
Well, that is the obvious, right? Not even getting into that. But so I think officiating and consistency, I don't know that they always are a perfect marriage, but also the how consistent, even if we're saying these, let's assume these are the most consistent officials ever in all of the world of all of hockey, they are now having to adjust to the adjustments that the PWHL is inevitably going to make with their rule book, because everything from visors, I confirmed with Jana Hefford, they will not be wearing visors in the PWHL. And they have some of their venues that are trapezoid ready and friendly, and some that aren't, as an example. So those are just two main things. And then, of course, the big issue that's, I think the hockey community might see it as the biggest issue, is the whole idea of body contact and how to officiate that. And we see that body contact, especially above the shoulder, is changing in all of hockey anyway. No open ice hits, you can't really make a play on a person without making a play on the puck in women's hockey. What's that going to look like? So there's still a lot of questions.
Yeah, and that's the biggest thing for me, is that I'm not entirely certain why you would do that without, again, I feel like, and again, this goes back to the consensus timeline, but if you're going to do that, then you are fundamentally going to have to implement those rule changes team by team, player by player, because these players are not used to NHL rules. They're used to IIHF rules. I believe even the PHF use IIHF rules. So, with that being said, you can't do that without implementing that. And implementing that means extending your timeline. If this is really what you're looking at doing, you should be extending your timeline to ensure that these players are the best equipped that they can be in order to understand what these refs are doing. You're just completely deepening the learning curve for everybody involved at all areas. So it's very weird to me.
Yeah, it's very strange. And again, one of those things, even the trapezoid, I kind of asked about it, and it was like, I'll kind of get back to you. Like, I want to say I know, but I'm not really sure. And it's one of those things.
I'm sorry.
I mean, if you follow Black Rosie Media Patreon, you can get the direct quotes. But I mean, it's one of those things where, again, because of the timeline, they were beholden to certain arenas. That makes sense. That also, from my conversation with Jana Hefford, in some ways impacted the start date. And it definitely impacted because, again, of course, I will be at the Winter Classic. I asked about the Winter Classic specifically because we know they will do an activation in February for All-Star, the MNHL All-Star Weekend in Toronto. But another thing Jana Hefford said, and I did agree with her on this, now, is that ultimately the PWHL wanted to start their season in their market or markets. And that, I think, is fair. And so they would have had to start prior to the Winter Classic if they wanted to do I guess they didn't have to, but again, if they want to start kind of in market, you would probably want to do something with the NHL after you already dropped the puck, which is effectively what they're doing. So lots more to discuss about the venues and all of that as it comes down. But I think the big thing, Angelica, that we wanted to talk about, two big things, and they fit together, is the evaluation camp that you were able to attend and reported on for Black Rosie Media, and then what came out of those eval camps, because we do have final rosters. So let's take it over to you, Angelica, our North/Western New York expert, boots on the ground.
God. Yeah. So I actually took a trip to Utica on Tuesday. So I was there for the Fan Fest. And got to see all 6 teams in action. Obviously, with it being the second day of scrimmages, technically, obviously they came to Utica over the weekend, but nothing had been open to the public, just media and the players and everything up until December 5th, which was the Fan Fest day. And players got to see 2 of the teams, New York and Ottawa, in action. So, but anyway, made the trip, which I thought, first of all, I thought it was 2 hours. It's 3 hours. So I was not happy when I turned on my Google Maps and was like, wait a second, I have to add a whole nother hour. Yeah.
You have to add a whole nother playlist to the ride.
Oh, thank God Spotify makes like 3-hour playlists now, because I was full on like, I cannot believe I haven't done 3 hours. But anyway, first things first, Utica University Nexus Center is where evaluation camp was held. It was held, same venue is going to be used for Worlds in April, which is super exciting. We're going to get into that, as it gets closer. Held there, beautiful facility, very up to date, very modern, tons of viewing points to watch action from, both upper and lower levels. So really, really cool. The first scrimmage I saw, if I recall correctly, was Minnesota and Toronto. And Minnesota and Toronto, 2 pretty hard-nosed teams. Toronto definitely has the capacity to overwhelm very quickly, because they're a pretty fast team. We'll get into how I feel about the roster a little bit later on, because it's not the most exciting, aside from, a couple of obvious. But anyway, so Toronto took the lead early on. Minnesota clawed all the way back to eventually take the game 5-4. If I again recall correctly, it was a wild one. It was wild. So it was a lot of fun to watch. Toronto just kind of fell flat, took quite a few penalties, which Troy Ryan was talking about. It's much more important, and I think the caveat needs to be said for all 6 teams. It was much more important that they start kind of figuring out who works best together. So there's a lot of line tinkering, a lot of people in and out of the lineup. I didn't get to see everybody that I would have wanted to see on the ice, but I did see quite a few people. So with that said, second was Montreal and Boston, 2 teams. I will say right off the bat, Montreal is so exciting. I am so stoked for Montreal. Just their forward line alone is just so strong. I mean, if you've read my my quick hits for Black Rosie Media, you guys know I'm so like I cannot believe the names that we have on this roster. It is just like Jillian Dempsey, Anne-Sophie Betty, Laura Stacy, Marie-Philippe Poulin, Teresa Vanishova, like absolutely
insane.
And then
It's
even like
insane.
you have players who are amazing role makers like Sarah Bujold on that roster too. I mean, again, we're gonna get into the rosters, but it was so exciting to watch them. They were so fast. I love the chemistry that Betty and Dempsey had because they were on the line together. Yeah, exactly. Oh, so good. Mwah. Bellissimo.
Oh my gosh. Who was working with them for the majority of the time? Because you've got who was centering, I should say.
I think Dempsey was center. I can't remember. It could have been Gabrielle David. Yeah, I think it was her. Leah Lum might have also taken a couple of ships with her, but I'm not sure.
I could see that. I mean, I'm just curious because to me, what I love about Betty and Dempsey is that it's like all gas, no brakes. But it's like I don't even want to call it chaos. It's intense, but it's not chaotic. It's extremely hard nosed. It's extremely smart, controlled, but just it's a burst.
They put 100 out on the ice all the time. And that hard nose, I love that name. I love that word for it because that was exactly what came to mind when I think of both of their games. They're both super hard nosed, but it's not they're skilled players with a grinder's edge. They are so strong and just relentless, but they also can burn you with their skill. It's not just a grind it out with them, you know?
Love it.
So,
okay.
So excited.
We're not going to spend all of our time on Montreal.
I know.
That's pretty.
Again, we're gonna get to Montreal.
And just pause for the cause here because I think it's fair to say that you and I, at minimum, are going to keep it real with what we're seeing, how we're seeing things play out. And there have been a lot of questions that we have brought up right here on the Founding Four podcast, which I maintain. I think they are good questions to ask. And we gonna ask them. But and what I'll say is that this is what we want the fruits of the labor of everyone who's come before. This is what we're hoping will be more of the norm, talking about projected lines. And that's some of the work that I've been doing or trying to do when it comes with the Writers Association, just making sure that media has as much as possible to be prepared to cover the league when the puck drops on January 1st. So the evaluation camp, I think from that perspective, we still have some work to do. And I do want to say that the league, when I was able to talk with them, they had been responsive to certain things. And so you being able to be there again and report on things like this is what makes hockey, right?
Yeah.
And I had to have some real conversations and say, I mean, you now are covering NCAA hockey, so you can attest to this in part. There are things that you will get at before every NCAA game that we couldn't guarantee we would get before professional games.
Right.
As media members.
It's true. And that's been one of the biggest things that, that's why, and I have to credit the work of people like Kaylee Herndon for the Connecticut Whale. I mean, I think if anybody set the standard for pro women's hockey, it's her. She was phenomenal in making sure that we got anything we needed prior to the game, and then immediately after the game, the weekend was over. It was just like clockwork. And that to me was so impressive because you're right, and I'm covering NCAA hockey now, but I've also covered NCAA hockey in the past. And it's the same thing. You get primers, you get, lineups,
media guide, notes,
you get the media guide,
lineups, pronunciations.
Exactly. Which, oh my God, the pronunciations. during all of those scrimmages, I'm sure you guys heard some of them if you saw if there was anything with New York and Ottawa, but holy brother of I don't even know what. It was so bad. Literally, I'm next to a sports writer from Montreal, and some of the French names, girl. Yeah.
Okay.
He's like, how did they pronounce that? I'm like, I'm so sorry. On behalf of every Anglophone here, I am so sorry.
I mean,
so bad.
Listen, we could spend the entire podcast going over this. For example, I can recount how the entire WoHo world, or so it felt. I'm a little dramatic, but whatever. It's my story. I get to tell it how I want. Yeah. How the first Montreal game that I called in the PHF, the amount of messages that I was getting and people, but when before the game, I was like, do not come at me when you hear me say Anne-Sophie's name. Here is video proof of why. When I tell you, people were like, I don't think you're saying it right. I was like, well, I'm going to keep saying it how she told me to say her name. And then we can go from there.
I mean, if anything, it's everybody else's fault for not asking that sooner.
I mean, I'm just going to ask because people say my first name, my middle name, my last name, all kinds of ways. And I'm like, okay, that was a cute try, but it's this way.
My name is Angelica. Like, do you know how many times I get everything but Angelica?
I believe it.
That's why I'm like, that's not Angelica.
Angelica is fine though. That is Angie approved.
Yes, it is, because that's my name in Spanish. Angelica is my name in Spanish.
Angelica,
you're not changing it to Angela or Angelina or Angelique. Like, no. Fuck out of here. I don't understand. Anyway,
we go hard. Say my name. Series will live forever.
We go like Anne-Sophie Betsy and Jillian Dempsey in the corners. That's how we do. That's how we do.
J. Downey Landry, Kareen.
Oh my God, J. Downey Landry. Okay, we got to move on because I have so much.
Okay. Let's go.
Okay, so Boston.
Ooh.
We'll get to them. But I will say this: it took them a while to get everything together, and I think it kind of is very similar to, and this might be my little petty Betty Hart having a moment, but
it's fine. I let it out.
The same way I feel about Toronto's forward line is how I feel about most of Boston.
Ooh.
So we'll get to it.
Ooh.
Not that this is not to like, this really isn't to throw shade at anybody. This really isn't, but it's just not super exciting, and they weren't super exciting in the scrimmage either that I witnessed. They are a team that still very much needs to come together, and we'll talk about this roster. But they're a team that still very much needs to come together, and it was evident because they didn't really do much in the scrimmage, which is why Montreal won the scrimmage portion of it, but they shined in the shootout. So that was very telling to me that
I have some thoughts.
Yes, exactly. So we'll get to them once we get to this.
We're going to shout out the homies, the Sports Bra, not sponsored, totally open to it. But we started something new with our Patreon posse. Every quarterly. Posse. Shantae. Okay. The posse, the Patreon posse, the homies on Patreon. Quarterly, I have so many things that you just like collect, and they don't all fit on my little shrine wall. So I have some stuff from the Sports Bra, not these because I was scared to even get them home. I was like, they're gonna break. But we have some Sports Bra swag, and we're gonna be talking about the rivalry series at the end of this live podcast. So make sure you tune in for that. Okay.
Maddie goes, I should probably read my email.
Yeah, you should. As a matter of fact, I have another message going out tomorrow because you're just in time. There is some swag left for this quarter, the end of 2023, and then we'll have some stuff in for the grabs, up for grabs. Go for it.
Sorry, I just remembered this. Jillian Dempsey did score against Boston.
Did she? Because I might have missed that on the WoHo interwebs.
She did. She 100% did. It was a beautiful give and go with Betty, of all people. So this was the it ended up being, I think, the game-winning goal. It was the insurance goal at the time. Right. Yeah, it was the goal to put them up 2 at the time. But it was a beautiful give and go with Betty. Dempsey down the right side. You got Betty going down the middle. Give and go. It was they caught who was in net at that point? It was Emma Soderberg. So they caught Emma Soderberg unawares, like caught her at the back door. Soderberg is a very aggressive goalie. We all know this if we've seen her.
Yes.
Saw her during World. She's a very aggressive goalie, and a lot of times I love it. I personally love a goalie who plays at the top of their crease.
Come on, Joey. Give me Joey DeCourt energy all day.
Exactly. I love it. But in this case, it did burn her because she was caught completely out of position, left the back door wide open. None of the defense actually picked up Dempsey. They thought that she went behind the net, but she kind of came back, like curled back. Sneaky. And sneaky. And it was beautiful. And I did get to speak to her. We have a celebrity in the chat. Hello, Mike Murphy. But yeah, I got to speak to her post game about that, and she seemed really, really happy to be able to score. Obviously she had nothing but great things to say about the city of Boston. I mean, she's a Massachusetts native, we all know. So it is very weird to see her in, colors other than Boston's. But she was just really excited. She is looking at this as a great opportunity to be in a new city and play with some players who, she may have played against at some point, but certainly never played with all on the same team, which again is so exciting. And so just wanted to shout out Demps because, we love Demps household.
We're gonna have to go through. We're gonna talk about rosters next because this is the Founding Four pod. We said we were sticking with the name, but as you can tell, the Founding Four comes from the NWHL. This is the throwback hoodie right here.
Oh yeah, I wish I got one of those.
Yeah, we were the Founding Four before they made these. I'm just saying, we set trends. What can I say? Mike Murphy knows what I mean, but I mean, we set trends. But anyway, we're sticking with the Founding Four, so we're definitely going to identify OGs of the Founding Four as we run through these rosters. Absolutely. But we said we were going to go alpha order, and so we're going to start.
Wait, I didn't get to talk about New York and Ottawa.
Oh, okay. You want to do Utica, your observations from Utica. Okay. Yeah. And then we'll go into rosters. Okay.
Yeah. Real quick. New York and Ottawa, very, very exciting matchup. They kind of went with their big names, especially in net. We had Emirates Mashmeyer playing against Corinne Schroeder. And it was a great matchup. I mean, New York and Ottawa are two very fast teams. They are teams that I think, again, need some fine tuning, but they are really dynamic and really a lot of fun to watch. And I will say, and I did tweet this, Corinne Schroeder looking very much like her Boston Pride self.
Okay, let's go.
Yes. She faced 40 shots. She faced 41 shots. Stopped 40 of them. Only allowed one goal all game. Just again, echoes of her time with Boston. So excited that she's a part of this roster.
Her pad setup.
Oh,
it's beautiful. It's beautiful.
When I tell you, teal is such an underrated color in hockey.
Well done.
And those pads. Oh my God. Anyway, let's go ahead and get into the roster because we've got so much to talk about.
Into the roster. Yes, so much, but
Yeah.
also like these pads. Let's see. I want to see if I can pull them up real quick
They're so
because
beautiful.
just like
They're
come on,
so,
come on,
they look a lot like,
come on,
and this breaks my heart. She got cut.
come on.
But they remind me a lot of Cass Sauvé's Buttes pads with the skyline of the city of Buffalo. She had very similar. But these pads,
Come
look
on.
at the goddamn pads.
I mean,
Ugh,
come on.
let's go.
Sick. That's sick. Brooklyn Bridge, baby. Let's go. I love it. I love it. Like,
I mean, it's still
come
really
on.
funny because they don't play in New York; they play in Connecticut. But you know,
Yeah. Well, yeah, they play nowhere near any of these iconic things. But,
landmark. It's fine.
That's a thing.
It's fine.
It's fine. It's fine.
They
It's
play
totally
2 hours
fine.
away. It's fine.
It's totally fine. Okay, we're gonna talk about. Yes, they're so sweet. Other than they're playing in quote New York. Yeah. It's crazy. All right, we're gonna go through rosters. We have just gonna go through them pretty quick here. They're on the screen, but we're gonna run through here. So these are the final official rosters. We're starting alpha order, so we're starting with Boston. Now, who on this list? Sophie Shirley, Alina Mueller, Wenskowski, Taylor, Amanda Pelkey, Taylor Gerard, Gigi Marvin. Hello, Hannah
Yes,
Grant, Hillary
throwback.
Wood, Cheyenne Darkangelo back to the States, Lauren Gable, Teresa Schwartzell, Jamie Lee Rattray. Okay, exciting. Someone I'm excited to see. Nicole Costa making a comeback. Let's go. Emily Brown, Megan Keller, Sydney Morin, who we've seen in Minnesota.
Yes.
PHF. Haley Frackton.
Yes. She initially was on, she was on Minnesota's training camp roster. So that's another story we got to talk about. But yeah.
Exactly. Sophie Jakes. I know a lot of people excited. We've got Jess Haley, Emma Soderberg. You mentioned Aaron Frankel, Cami Cronish, is it?
Yes.
And then Jessica, I think I'm skipped.
You did skip her. Jessica DiGirolamo.
Read that. So okay,
you're good.
Okay, so how far is this roster from what you saw in Utica? You already alluded to some of it, but what were some big changes?
So not a whole lot of big changes. We did see Emma Buckles, who was initially drafted and also signed prior to training camp, actually get released from that contract. She is now on reserve for Boston, as is Sammy Davis and Samantha Isbell. So those are the 3 reserve players. I'm a little surprised that one name that has not made it either as a rostered player or a reserve is McKenna Brand. Did not make it out of training camp with a contract and isn't even on reserve. So I don't know what the deal was there. I don't remember if she actually was on the ice suited up when I watched on Tuesday. But that was really the big surprise for me.
Because she's on the Utica roster. I'm gonna see if I can find the game recaps to see if she's suited up. But yeah, that's an interesting point about McKenna Brand.
And then we do have Sydney Morin signing with Boston from Minnesota. So that was interesting to me, especially considering, maybe I think it was just Minnesota did pick up a defender to replace her on there. And they do have a couple of other names, I guess we can kind of go over once we get to that roster, which will be in just a moment. But yeah, I mean, McKenna Brand, I think, was the biggest one for me. And then Sydney Morin coming over. I'm interested to see where Sydney Morin fits into this defense because I do think that this defense is pretty stacked, if I do say so. You've got Fratkin and Healy and Jakes and Keller. Those are probably going to be, unless they feel like Jakes needs a little bit more time, that's probably going to be your top 4, I think. So seeing where Sydney Morin fits in, Sydney Morin is a defender with a lot of offensive upside. I think she can really do well on this roster, but I'm really intrigued to see where she actually fits in.
Okay. All right. So that's Boston. We're
Yeah.
going to head down the list. We've kind of alluded to it, but Minnesota made some changes as well. So
Yes.
there's still plenty of Sydneys, as we can see on the roster. Now, here's someone that I think is worth mentioning. Lee Steckline will play for the PWHL. And I believe because she was signed before free agency, has a 3-year contract.
Yes.
But she has officially retired, and a lot of this conversation, take that off the screen. There was conversation even before the last Olympics in Beijing, China, that Lee Steckline was going to step away and retire. She did not. She played in the Olympics. She played in World Championships, but seems like we saw her perhaps in training camp in Utica, but we'll not see her for Worlds. But she does make this roster. Levier, Hensley, Rooney, very. We're going to talk goalies. But I mean, who are some names on this roster that really stand out to you? I mean, definitely a lot of homegrown talent, as you can see
Absolutely.
on this roster, but
Absolutely.
also some players that we've seen play for the Whitecaps in a few different iterations.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we have kind of Cone Schofield, obviously. I mean, it's kind of one of the biggest ones. We have some names from Whitecaps of more recent. Sydney Brott, who made the team but is unfortunately on long-term injury reserve. She did suffer a pretty bad lower body injury. So she did make the team, but unfortunately she will be out for a while. We wish her the best, of course.
Yeah,
But we're seeing Britton Fleming,
Mhm.
obviously number 1 pick Taylor Heisey, making the team. No surprise there. She absolutely was instrumental to a lot of the Minnesota scrimmages. Just tremendous offensive effort, individualized offensive effort, especially. We have some more kind of grinded out players, but still with plenty of skill. Kelly Panic, Liz Sheppers, Grace Zumwinkle, Team USA standout, and University of Minnesota standout, again with the homegrown talent. Dominique Kramer and Emma Greco coming over from Buffalo and Toronto, respectively, to be on the Minnesota defense. Obviously, Sydney Morin departing for Boston. Who knows? If that was just because there wasn't enough room for her, or maybe it just worked out better for her to go to Boston instead. Who knows? But I thought that was really interesting. And then, the goalie situation. So there's a whole. Before we even get to the goalie situation, I have to talk about Abigail Bureen. I thought Abby Bureen was fantastic during camp. I am very surprised that she did not get a contract. And instead, she is a reserve alongside Nikki Nightingale and Lauren Bench. Lauren Bench is the only goaltender as well, who is actually on a reserve. Now, the way that the reserve spots work is that each team has 3 reserves, but they can technically be called up by any team in the league. That's how that works. So they are on standby, essentially kind of like a taxi squad, in the event that a team needs more reserves due to injury or anything along those injury, personal reasons, I'm assuming, things along those lines. Now, with each team rolling 3 goalies, which, spoiler alert, each team is rolling 3 goalies, thankfully. I don't know about the need for more than one. From what I understood, the way the reserves worked is that the league wasn't going to mandate that each team keep one of each position or anything like that. Therefore, they didn't really mandate that each team would need to keep a goalie. But I do think there are a couple of goalies other than Lauren Bench that I probably would have looked at making a reserve. Again, this is entirely up to the teams, but I feel like Bench was kind of a little out of her depth. And I think that that's kind of par for the course, especially, she's coming over from Modo in the SDHL, which, even with some of the modifications that we've seen in Swedish women's hockey, it's still a very different game in Europe, especially in Sweden, than it is in North America. I think I talked a lot to Lolo Burnson about that when she played for Buffalo. And she said it took her a while to really find her footing and get used to the game that North America plays as opposed to Europe. Europe is very much more of an East-West game, whereas you have a lot of more North-South direction in North American women's hockey. And it's a lot more of a, again, this was, a little bit prior to the SDHL and, adopting body checking, but there is a lot more physicality, a lot less of a birth, I guess you could say, between players, skater and goalie, and such. So I remember Lolo talking a lot about, having to kind of get used to players being more on top of her, essentially. And I feel like maybe that was something
Yeah, to your point, I mean, the ice is literally, a different size. They're usually using Olympic ice as opposed to NHL ice, which most North American, we even saw that in the PHF and WHL, when they would go over to Canada. So that's really interesting. I mean, I know you're going to have a lot more to say about goaltending in general, but I saw this from Mad. I'd play Lev over the other two, Hensley as backup. Now this is interesting because they've got Hensley, Nicole Hensley, Amanda Levier, and Maddie Rooney. Now, I think Hensley and Rooney, honestly, USA hockey and how they've been deploying their goaltenders, very interesting. I kind of like what we're seeing under the new head coach and maybe some opportunities for younger players. So I think that's going to be interesting. But yeah, I think I don't think anyone can safely assume that there's a go-to starter. At least I think from looking at the names on paper and their performances of late, I would say that Levier absolutely has a chance. And this is something that we've seen come up with other reporters as well. And we're starting to hear PWHL GMs and coaches allude to the fact that some of their players have not had high level consistent competition over the last 4 years.
Right.
Now, I think if you say that statement, depending on your allegiances in women's hockey, perhaps that might mean one thing to one person and one thing to another. I'm talking about genuinely having consistent games. We saw that be an issue early.
Right. And we're going to talk about that a little bit. Yeah, and we're going to talk a little bit more about that with Toronto, because that was an interesting point that Gina Kingsbury made up, or brought up, I should say, not made up, but brought up. So we'll get a little bit. I know what you meant. She made that shit up. But
okay, all right. So we were talking about Minnesota. Do you want to stay with Minnesota for a little, or you want to move to Montreal?
I just want to make a point about the goaltending. I mean, I think that you're right on. I will say that of the three, of course, you're going to have Levier with the most workload in the past few seasons, especially last season. She was a workhorse for Minnesota. I don't think she had a day off. I think she had to break her collarbone to get a freaking couple of weeks off. So with that said, I can see her pushing Hensley and Rooney to keep up. And I think that's exactly what kind of happened here, is that she kind of pushed Rooney to keep up. And she, again, I think she will also push Hensley as well. I think it's also a little bit of a throwback with Nicole Hensley and Amanda Levier, both of them former Buffalo Beauts, So I thought that was really
make that connection.
I know, right? Of course I would make that connection. But yeah, I think that of the 6 teams, this is a really, really, really strong goaltending trio. So I think that they are gonna make some teams very frustrated, which I personally love, because we love goal.
We love it. We love it. Okay, Montreal. Now, I think Montreal and Ottawa, for me, just even the training camp rosters, what they did in the draft, I found them most intriguing.
Yes.
And I'm so jealous, so much FOMO that you got to see some of it in action. I can just see how good you are now. So let's Okay, we talked a little bit about the beauty that is Anne-Sophie Betty and Julian Dempsey connecting. So let's go straight to the official roster and then work our way backward from what you saw. So, I mean, here we go. You mentioned David, I believe, earlier, Leah Lum, Dempsey, Maureen Murphy, Laura Stacy, we mentioned, LaFour, we have Teresa Vanishova, oh my gosh.
I forget about Kennedy Marchment. Oh my God.
This is like cheat code. Okay. Kennedy Marchment, Sarah Bujold. You didn't just now because I'm going numerical, so don't come for me, interwebs. Marie-Philippe Poulin, like, come on. Claire Dalton. Kristen O'Neill. Okay, help me with this last name. Mariah.
I think it's Mariah Keppel.
Keppel. Okay, Keppel. Yeah. Okay, Catherine Daou. We've talked about Madison Bizzall. Katie Tabin. I really love that. Brigitte
Lagagnier.
Lagagnier. There you go.
Lagagnier.
Thank you. I got to work on my French. Erin Ambrose. Dominika Lashkova. Oof, yes, let's go. And then who do we have in that? Anne Renee Debien, Elaine Chuli, and then Marlene. How do we say this?
Marlene Boissonneau.
Boissonneau. There we go.
That's my best interpretation of it.
That roster,
though.
Final roster.
That is, when I tell you, there are so many names on this roster. This roster is so stacked that I forgot about freaking Kennedy Marchment.
Fam, this is crazy. This is like,
this honestly, roster is like.
This is what I'm going to tell you right now. Between Ottawa and Montreal, for my eyes, blind eye test, right? They understood the assignment. They understood where women's hockey is right now, and they capitalized on the opportunity to take everything that's happening, regardless of all the feels, and put together a lock solid team. To me, this speaks to, I'm going to read those resumes, I'm going to check those references, and I'm going to get me a squad.
Yes. I will say, when I tell you just the absolute core, like everybody involved from top to freaking bottom, we had, Ori Chevering, Danielle Sauvageau. We had Mikhail Nahabedin, who's been doing analytics for Montreal. Brilliant. Absolutely freaking brilliant. I cannot, just on paper, this roster is just chef's kiss. I mean, you have such a mix of elite talent with up-and-comers. You have role players like Bujold. You have really young upstarts like Maureen Murphy coming out of Northeastern. You have even like the defense, there's such a great upside to this defense in terms of the way that they can contribute and jump into the play. Katie Tabin, I'm telling you, Katie Tabin is probably my favorite defender in recent PHF history. Favorite defender. I think her skating, her vision is superb, and I'm so glad she made this roster. She did suffer an injury early on in camp, but I'm hoping to see a lot of her in Montreal because I just think she's going to be superb for them. And then, I mean, we look at the freaking talent in net of Anne Renee Debien and Elaine Chuli. Come on, this is a roster that I feel like if you had given me a PWHL team to GM, this would be it. So good.
This one, thank you. Yeah.
This
is a solid squad, and they're really, from looking at their training camp roster, I mean, there's not much popping for me regarding any additions, subtractions, because let me just double check.
So there are a couple of reserves. Melody Daou.
I was gonna say, Daou is
Alexandra Poznikov is reserve as well. I don't remember who the third reserve is for them, but I do know that Melody Daou and Alexandra Poznikov are both reserves. Of course, we have Malpoulin Labelle go to Toronto. She's now signed with them. So she did depart. But yeah, I mean, I think that altogether, this roster was so well put together. I mean, this was kind of it. It's just like this was it.
Like I said, understood the assignment. Yes. Understood the assignment. Say less. Absolutely. Like, do it right the first time. Okay. Okay. All right. We're going to do the same thing, going to the official roster for New York, and then we'll backtrack. Who's that? Okay. We have, we have Eldridge, Kayla, Vespa, Abby Rock, Chloe Aurard, Alexandra Labelle, Elizabeth Giguère, Peyton Levi. Oh, okay. Madison Packer. Who's that? Never heard of them. Alex Carpenter, Jade Downey Landry, Jill Saunier is someone I'm super excited about. Emma Woods, Savannah Norcross, Olivia Zafuto. Yes.
Another one I'm excited about.
Yes. Taylor Baker, Brooke Hobson. I always mess up her last name. Help me here.
Jamie Bourbonnais.
Ella Shelton. Mika Zandy. It's Mika Zandy Hart. Joanna Fallman. Corrine Schroeder. Lindsay Post. And Abby Levy. Like, not Sis is excited. Like, look at this. Let
me tell you, and you know this, I was a Corrine Schroeder skeptic when I first popped up. I was such a skeptic, and then I saw her during All-Star Weekend, and I'm like, girl, this girl's it. This girl,
that Boston defense wasn't that good. I'm gonna tell you right now.
No, they weren't. They surely weren't. Her facing 35 plus shots almost every single night and still managing a high 900 save percentage. That is talent, queen.
I love that we're coming back to this, because we definitely we were vibing on different wavelengths. Because I remember I was like, I don't know, fam, she might be real.
I was a skeptic because I've seen it so many times with Boston, where it was like their defense is so good and their offense possesses the puck so often that the goaltenders don't really have to do much. But
I feel like it's the last part. I feel like they've had some solid defenders. I don't know if I was ever in love with the Boston defense, if we're keeping it a buck.
Okay, fair. But either way, their offense scored so much and possessed the puck so much, it didn't even freaking matter. So when I then see that there were some holes bigger than Swiss cheese in that damn defense, and Corrine Schroeder was earning every single cent of her salary, absolutely, I saw the light. But anyway.
I saw the light. Okay, let's talk about how this roster though varies. And someone I want to talk about, perhaps, Claire Thompson.
Yes. She's a reserve player. So I think that a lot, I mean, and reserve can mean so many things. I mean, it could mean like there was a compassionate circumstance waiver. That they're on.
I believe there was with Claire Thompson.
Right. So sorry, you caught me mid-bite.
So I'll let you chomp on that. But Claire Thompson.
Dinner before this. I'm sorry.
That's all good. So for those who followed our journey and our path, you know that I've been trying to figure out exactly what a compassionate waiver is. They, to this day, have not listed who was granted compassionate waivers. I know of at least 3 people that I've heard through conversation. One of them was believed to be Claire Thompson. And so the reason I went to focus on Claire Thompson with regard to reserves and also going back to compassionate waiver is because Claire Thompson, as I recall, is still in school at NYU. And so I wonder, and we've already gone through, I guess this would be our 4th team now, but I think it is worth noting, as you said, reserve can mean different things, or getting to a reserve contract might be a different road for one player versus another. And it kind of reminds me, Angelica, of going back to the inaugural NWHL season, where you had a reserve player, right, end up being like an MVP at All-Star
Just
Weekend.
like Kelly Seven.
I mean, we're always gonna make it about Kelly Stedman.
I mean, it's always about Kelly Stedman. Let's be real, though.
Always about do the steady. Like, come on, let's go. We're always gonna talk about Kelly Stedman on this podcast.
Yes.
So I feel like maybe that's the vibe with Claire Thompson. Some of these things we won't really know until we start getting more consistent coverage in market. We can talk to players, see what's going on there.
And so it's with that said, it's Claire Thompson, Carly Olivier, and Alexa Grushow, former Riveter, on the reserve squad for New York. It's really funny to me, going back to goalies real quick, because the vibe that I was getting with the whole Corinne Schroeder thing, because I was like, why did they sign Abby Levy before Schroeder? From what I understood, from what the vibe was, they, I believe, did offer, or probably were going to offer, Schroeder a contract all along. But she was like, wait. Didn't necessarily love the amounts, and was let me show you exactly why you need to pay me more. And we'll get to it. That's the vibe that I was understanding. I don't know if that was the case, but if that is the case, we stand. I'm so serious.
In this house, we stand. That's what the CBA means to me, baby. Get a bag.
I was like, holy moly. If that really was what happened, if they really did offer her a contract and was like, no, you're gonna pay me what you owe me. Girl, stand Corinne Schroeder always. Anyway, the person I'm really excited, forward wise, Jay Downey Landry, of course. Very odd not to see her, but I did see her during the scrimmage between New York and Ottawa, and I mean, she's just hasn't missed a beat. Just such an amazing presence on both sides of the puck. She will hunt your ass down. If you have the puck, she is back checking you into hell and getting that puck away from you. I love her energy. I love her style. I think she's going to be so much fun to watch. And I really like this roster. I really do. I think there's a lot of speed. I think there's a lot of precision.
I think it's not as solid for me on paper as the Montreal roster. I feel like I said, they checked references,
all the boxes,
all of that. That being said, like you mentioned, I think I mean, I really like Jade Downey Landry on this roster. I'm very curious to see what Mad Pack is going to do with a roster like this, because I think this roster, just looking, can be a very New York style team, regardless that they play in Connecticut. And what do we know?
Metro.
That's a grinding. Yes, right. Oh, even though I hate that too, just say tri-state. It rolls off the tongue so much easier.
Very tri-state.
Very tri-state. And depending on where you are in the tri-state, sometimes you could even lump Philly in. No, not Pennsylvania, Philly, very specifically. There's a difference. Anyway. So I like this. I like what this can become. Yes. I think Saunier, I'm very curious to see what Jill Saunier is going to do. I've really liked Jill Saunier on the Canadian national team. I feel like she's gone a little bit under the radar. And she's somewhere between like a hybrid, like Sage level veteran and kind of like a plug and play workhorse type player, like, your third, fourth line. And I think there's a lot of value. And again, that speaks to a New York style. So I think Montreal wins for me on paper still when it comes to just the overall WoHo landscape. But if there is a team that kind of embodies the catchment area that they're trying to represent.
Area,
right? Yeah, they're in the New York Light. I think this.
That's Jersey. That's Jersey, baby. That's Jersey.
New York Light is AKA New Jersey.
That was kind of metro though. No, but yes, for real though, the shade of it all. But no, I honestly am really intrigued to see how Madison Packer is going to fit into this.
Yeah.
There was a whisper that she had gotten injured as well during camp. So there is that to consider. I also do think that this is kind of a roster that might let her finally kind of take a step back from a starring role, because I think we've talked about this with Anya as well. Friend of the show, has been on the show a bunch of times. And she has kind of mentioned how like Packer has been trying to kind of step down from that position where she kind of had to do everything. And I think that this roster, I think, at least from what I'm seeing, does allow her to do that, and allows her to kind of maybe take a step back in playing time and things like that.
Yeah. And I think it's a roster where she doesn't have to necessarily be that kind of more physical grinder version of her play, because I think, and it's interesting because I've never really seen it on full display, but I think Madison herself would say that she's got maybe a little bit more of a finesse game. I mean, we saw that goal against the Buffalo Buttes, and one Shannon Zabados. Oh yeah, it lives rent free in my head. That's
not mine. That bitch pays $2K a month.
And so I'm curious to see, to your point, if it's not that physical game, that high up in the PIMS, but it's more of the finesse coming in, playing a role on the offensive side in particular. So also, I think that's going to be interesting.
Ooh, yeah. Also, cool. Jessie Eldridge is a standout for me. She played amazing all camp. And she actually had her contract restructured out of this camp. She was originally a 2-year player, got restructured to 3. So she, again, pulled a page out of Kareen Schroeder's book and was like, yo,
get a bag.
Pay me. F you, pay me. We love that. I love her. We stand these girls getting their money, especially girls who, are not the best known names in the game. Like
because we support women.
Heck yes. Just like a sports bra. Just like a good bounceless sports bra.
Yes, let's go. Yes. Definitely friends of the show. Go check out the bounceless sports bra. That's it. That's how we do it.
My favorite sports bra I've ever had in my life, and that is no cap. Like so good.
So good.
But yeah, I mean, this is exactly, to your point, this is what the CBA is meant to do. I think that in a lot of ways, the CBA is structured without necessarily the top player in mind. And by top, I mean national team recognition, the players for whom this league in a lot of ways was built for. I say that with some bitterness, but I don't say it with as much as people want to think that I do, because ultimately, I mean, these players have been working toward this, and a lot of them are national team players. We can be honest about that. And in a lot of ways, this league and the CBA are built with them in mind more so than the player who isn't at the top of the casual fan's mind. So that's what I mean by that. But I like when we see players like that making the CBA work for them, making those things work for them, and saying, listen, you might not have thought of me at first for a 3-year contract, but I'm going to make you rethink that. And sure enough.
That's right. Or walk away Pretty Woman style. Big mistake. Big. Huge.
Big mistake. You work on commission, right?
Big mistake. Big.
Huge. Big mistake. Huge. I have more shopping to do. Thank you. On to Ottawa.
Okay. All right, off the hop. Listen, Natalie Snodgrass. Let me tell you. Hold on. Natalie Snodgrass. Man, listen, people were sleeping on Natalie Snodgrass because, listen, Minnesota was struggling a little her rookie year, but I was like, don't sleep on sis. She gonna make some things work. And sure enough, did. Love to see her on this Ottawa roster. Darryl Watts, another player, was set to, before the great air quotes acquisition, be the highest paid player in the PHF and in women's hockey history. That did not come to pass. Becca Gilmore, I know she got a lot of people, yourself included, excited about this one.
I'm so excited for Kaneshika. Oh my God.
Michaela Grant Mentis, Bucky, MGM. Listen, Haley Skamura too. I love her journey. Her journey is definitely one for the books. You already know everything Team Czechia is for me. Katarzyna Mrazova. Listen, Katarzyna Mrazova, like we had a whole talk. You were there at the draft with me. Like we had a moment because, you know, she's been through some things. Like people forget that when we talk, let me move this out of the way. People forget that when we talk about pioneers and when we talk about what women's pro hockey has looked like in its most recent versions, Katarzyna Mrazova has seen it all. Like don't sleep on her. I love that. We have I lost my spot. Okay, Gabby Hughes, Brianne Jenner, like, oof. I'm gonna keep it 100%. Outside of Sarah Nurse, Brianne Jenner might have been my favorite top 3 signing.
She's still at the top of her game, you know.
Nasty. Like her game is filthy. It's like I don't care who you root for. Genuinely, her game is so filthy that even if you are a Canada, like Team Canada fan, you still feel like dirty after watching her play. It's just like,
that's dirty.
Are we allowed? Is that allowed? It's just so beautiful.
Are we allowed to say that?
I feel violated. Should I?
Is she allowed to do that?
Like, it's so filthy. I love it. I'm here for it. I'm here for it. Danny Gutierrez, another player. Oh, Emily Clark. I mean, it just goes on and on and
Lexi
on.
Azija. Let me tell you about Lexi Azija.
Okay,
This girl, during the Fan Fest game, legitimately stole the puck and roofed the filthy. This was Ottawa's 1 goal in regulation. The filthiest top shelf on Colleen Schroeder over her right shoulder. I'm like, this bitch. She legit roofed it.
You see, what did I say? Listen, I haven't been able to see Ottawa, but I said on paper, the 2 teams I like the most coming out of the draft, I told when we were going back to Buffalo, I told you Montreal and Ottawa for sure.
Absolutely.
For sure. Absolutely. And I think it's the same thing that you're seeing. They understood the assignment. They're like, oh, bet we're getting, you know, unadulterated best on best. I'm going to show you what we got working. They were, you know.
Why is that word so funny?
It's just a weird word. I know. I want it to be dramatic.
I'm like, was there any adulterated hockey around? I hope not. Then Martin wasn't anywhere near this. What the hell?
Wow. I'm weak. We're so done. We have to wrap soon. We're losing it. Okay.
We haven't even touched the defense, which the defense, I mean,
I know. Oh, okay. Savannah Harmon, Amanda Boulier. Come on.
Oh, wait. Shout out to Hecate Sports Group. Eleni has been working overtime getting her girls signed. I think almost every single one of them were signed. We have Mariah Keppel, Jillian Dempsey, Rachel McQuigg, who's on this lineup with Ottawa, Amanda Boulier,
Yep.
I'm missing a couple. I know I'm missing a couple, but this girl, we stand her sports group anyway, but Eleni, amazing job, boo. We have to give it to her in her first year as doing this being a player agent. She has really, really done amazing for her players. So kudos to her. I'm so excited for her. I'm sure she's thrilled as well. But we also have so we've got
talk to us about reserves. Yeah. Okay.
Yes, reserves. We have Taylor Davison, former defender for the Toronto Six, Rosalie Demers, and Malia Schneider. Demers and Schneider, I don't know a whole lot about. Again, I'm a little rusty about the PWHPA. Taylor Davison, of course, really strong defender, depth defender for Toronto. So I think that's I think it's a good pickup. Again, we've got a lot of lefty shooters on this blue line, which I think is going to be of the two, Ashton Bell and Amanda Boulier are the only two that are righties. So that'll be interesting. I love that Tori Howard got a place on this blue line. I love Tori Howard's game as well. I think that she's a really, really underrated, strong defensive side defender. So, and
Friend
then
of the pod.
What's that? Friend of the pod, yes. Friend of the pod. Yes. And then we've got a trio of goalies here: Sandra Abstreiter from Germany, Emirates Mathmeyer, of course, Team Canada standout, and Rachel McQuigg, who got some playing time in Metro and made the most of her time here in camp for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. I think this is the a really nicely balanced goaltending trio. Yes. I really do think so. I think that it's fair to assume that we'll see Emirates take the lead off hop. But I'm very excited to see what Abstrader can do at this level. And we've kind of seen McQuigg, already do a little bit of that. Injury bug kind of hit the Riveters hard. But for a team, especially at the time that Rachel is getting starts, wasn't their best offensively, and certainly not defensively, puck retrieval, things of that nature, that made a lot of breakaway situations, a lot of rebound, second chance opportunities. And Rachel was up to the task with that high kind of octane offense that she was seeing, just given where the Riveters were at that time.
Right.
So
they took a while to warm up, especially. I mean, they really didn't hit their stride till the end of the season. I mean,
which is why I really hope we get to see Venla Hovey again at either the national team level or the professional level. I love that she landed an assistant role at Harvard. We've talked about that program has a lot of goodwill they have to win back.
Will say that coaching staff at Harvard, speaking on the NCAA side, they've done really, really well to kind of do that. And I mean, I think everybody understands they're in a rebuilding era right now at Harvard, needfully so. And I think Laura Bellamy is really doing a great job. I think she's kind of shown that already with her assistant hires. She's picked people who know the game, but also are very player attuned. I think Venla is very much like that. She is no nonsense, but she is also very attuned to her players. So I think that it's a really, really good I think that they've got something good in the works. It's probably not going to come together this season, but it will definitely come together in seasons following. But I do really hope to see, Venla in a head coaching capacity again at some point.
Yeah, but love that she's staying in the game. Okay. Other things we should say about Ottawa, or should we move on to your favorite, Toronto?
We can move on to Toronto, I guess.
All right. I mean, I will say this before we talk about the roster, I am a huge Troy Ryan fan. So he's coaching, he's at the helm of this team. And I do think this is an interesting roster, even for looking at their training camp roster. I mean, Sarah Nurse. So, I mean,
we love Sarah Nurse.
We just
We
stop
do love
there.
Sarah.
We love Sarah Nurse. I think other players looking at the training camp rosters, I mean, we see Jess Jones come back into the mix.
This roster is really like, oh my God, where has she been? Because we've
Right,
got
exactly.
yeah,
I mean, Rebecca Leslie,
yeah,
Maggie Connors, Allie Monroe was on that the eval camp roster. Erica Howe, Carly Jackson, Chris. Now this is what we're gonna get into. I know the goaltending, lots more goaltenders. Okay, all right. Are you ready? Are we ready? Let's go.
Yeah.
Okay, let's go over the official roster.
Yes. So we have Alexa Vasco, Samantha Kogan, Jessie Comfort, Maggie Connors, Sarah Nurse, Jess Jones, Natalie Spooner, Emma Malte, Caitlin Willoughby, Hannah Miller, Blair Turnbull, Brittany Howard. Which Brittany Howard, she was actually used in a very interesting way, which I'll get to in a minute, talking about camp, because I just remembered. She was actually on the penalty kill as a defender. So that was very interesting. Or penalty kill or power play. I can't remember. I have it in my notes. But she was on special teams as a defender. So yeah, she was playing the point, which I thought was really, really interesting. So then we have not a whole lot of difference here. The only difference is Victoria Bach, who, due to reasons outside of hockey, cannot join the team until February. So that is really the one big glaring omission from this roster right now. She is on as a reserve because of that.
And a player that's kind of found herself on the bubble, right, with the national team.
Right, exactly. So, which I think is really, really interesting. You know, she did stand out quite a bit during camp. You know, she had some really standout moments. So I'm surprised at how Team Canada has kind of pushed her on the outs. But you know, anyway, let's get to the defense. We have Renata Fast, Kelly Flanagan, Olivia Knowles, Jocelyn Larocque, and Ali Monroe, and who we talked about a little bit, and Lorianne Rougeau. Rougeau, sorry. Girl. So obviously Melissa Channel signing with Minnesota, which I think is a strong pickup for them because Minnesota has suffered some pretty severe injuries already. So it'll be interesting to see how she helps them out. No surprise with Renata Fast. We have Kelly Flanagan joining, which I think is a really interesting. She was really good in camp. I will say she was very fast, kind of, up to her usual tricks. She's a real good defender, a real good offensive defender. I think that I don't want to, this is not me shading. I think her offensive side is her upside. So, but Ali Monroe, again, playing really well. Jocelyn Larocque, who actually looked really strong in camp.
I love that.
Yeah, she's one of those players that is like, she plays a really tough game. She can take a few penalties, which is a little concerning. But she was jumping up into the play, and I feel like being around, she is, I want to say...
Yeah, her age came into question a lot because she was the first pick in the draft for Toronto. And a lot of people, not just with Jocelyn, but even with some of the 3-year contracts, have been talking about people's age. And I mean, first of all, I think it's so interesting when we use the age comps in women's hockey for a few reasons. One, because statistically speaking, women have a longer... like they peak later. So being on the quote unquote wrong side of 30 as a women's hockey player means something different than in men's hockey. It's really being on, I would say, the wrong side of 40, but I don't know. You know what I'm saying? Like, I think especially in certain positions, and I think defense lends itself to, you've been playing the position for a while. It's not, you don't have to be the strongest. You don't have to be the fastest. You have to read the play extremely well. And you want a defender like Jocelyn Larocque who will anchor the ship, steady things. Like you said, take penalties. I don't think, it's not roughing up the house enforcer style.
No, I
you
think
would
it's just
say,
more so because she is a little bit, she's not the fastest skater out there. I think there's
they're
still kind of a learning curve and kind of an adjustment period for her in
it's not
terms of,
even a learning curve. I think it's like what you would call gamesmanship. It's like, okay, this player is going to beat me, but I can take this penalty and guarantee to save a goal in this moment, or let them blow by me and put my goaltender in a bad situation. That's, to me, those are penalties in like situational awareness. You know what I'm saying? As opposed to taking a penalty because you don't want to, you know, skate an extra stride and you reach. Like, those are bad penalties versus knowing what's going down and saying, yeah, I kind of have to take this one right now.
Right. Yeah, I mean, fair. You know, I think that this is going to be a really interesting defense because of that. We have two defenders actually on reserve. So in addition to Bach, we have Emma Keenan and Jessica Condis. Emma Keenan, obviously, former Butte as well as a Connecticut Whale player. I I think when it comes to, she is very similar to LaRock in terms of, you know, being that player who, she does have some offensive upside to her. She will jump into the play when needed, but she is very much more of a defender who is going to kind of take that penalty when needed in order to stop a rush or, you know, bail her goalie out or anything like that. Some of the penalties she takes are kind of like, maybe not do that, girl, but not, you know, it's a very similar game. So I do like that they're keeping her in the loop. Now, this goaltending situation, let's talk about it. So, and I'm going to get a little bit on my soapbox here because New York actually had the same problem. So, and Minnesota also had the same problem. These teams all brought, I think of the 6 teams, 3 of them brought 4 goalies into the mix. So you had Minnesota, you had New York, and you had Toronto. Now, Minnesota obviously keeping bench in the mix. You had New York cutting Cassidy Sauve, not even bringing her to Utica in order to see, you know, if any teams wanted to take a crack at her, which I think could have really benefited her because she did have such a shortened season in Buffalo last year. And I think that really, if that's all that the teams were basing their evaluations on, then it really didn't work in her favor. But I think she has done really, really well to push herself back from hip surgery. And it breaks my heart that she didn't really get the potential, you know, the shot that I feel like she probably deserved. Same with Toronto. Now we have Kristen Campbell, Erica Howe, and Carly Jackson making the final roster. As we all know at this point, we stand CJ in this household. I am very happy. I am thrilled beyond thrilled that CJ still has a spot on a professional women's team. They deserve it. They're excellent goalie, excellent person. Couldn't speak more highly of them. We all know this. So the fact that they're keeping the mullet in the mix is fantastic.
Yes.
So Gina Kingsbury had some interesting words regarding, you know, her decision to really focus on playing Kristen Campbell and Erica Howe and not giving CJ the chance to suit up and also not giving the 4th goaltender, Amanda Makala, a chance to suit up. According to the interview, and it was Carissa Donkin who actually asked the question. So she asked, from CBC, she asked, and Gina Kingsbury basically said they wanted to give Campbell and Howe more starts because they knew that they didn't have as much time to play heading into the regular season. And they the focus was on giving them confidence. Now, in terms of Campbell, I guess I kind of understand that because she's a part of Team Canada. You know, Troy wanting to get her more, I guess, in tune. I think this is kind of a way for them not just to focus on their time with Toronto, but also, you know, despite whatever Troy Ryan wants to say about, switching the hats and, switching from Team Canada to Toronto. I mean, they're kind of the same thing. Let's be real. Half of Team Canada is on Toronto's roster. So it's bound to happen that this is going to be kind of a crossover. And Campbell getting the lion's share of the starts is probably to be expected because it's going to make her stronger for Team Canada. Okay, fine. Erica Howe, I scratched my head for so long at this signing because she was not bad in Brampton when she played in the CWHL, but she has not played consistently since. She played only a handful of games last year in the PWHPA, and she was not great. She also was not solid during training camp. So I think that of the 4 goalies, the one to round out the trio, I think, fortunately, is CJ, because of the 4, CJ has had really consistent play. Even if or the most consistent play, I should say. I mean, even being a backup, right. She still got 6 games in. She had been getting regular training. She'd been getting regular, enrichment, I guess you could say, as a member of a PHF team. And that's kind of what it is. Like, it's not, it's not as much as it is physical. I know, it's a weird word. It's a weird word. But
I love it.
But that's what I mean. So I think that, I know. I think the big question for me is, at least when it came to New York, they kind of made it obvious that, like, okay, Cass, like, we're going to cut you before bringing you into camp. I feel almost like with Amanda Makala, it was like you didn't even give her a chance. And then you didn't bring her on as a reserve. So you're not only now are you kind of putting that hope up that, she's going to have a spot, whether on Toronto or anywhere, you then don't suit her up. And it's just she kind of got the shit end of the stick. And again, it's one of those situations where, she also didn't get consistent playing time. She would have really benefited, I think, from getting a few looks. Whether it was, for Gina and Troy to decide, we're really not going to go with her. We're going to go with CJ instead, or just to give others a chance at looking at her, in a situation like where we've seen injuries already. I mean,
and that's where women's hockey as the whole has to do a little bit better, because right before the air quote acquisition, I had banked, as you know, a lot of interviews, and part of those interviews were with coaches, the coaching staff from the Toronto Six, because they did a dev camp of sorts, and were getting ready to participate in something that the NHL had going on. So I guess this was around the entry draft, and they had some kind of coaches convention or something. Okay. And what I was talking to Mark about, because he was supposed to return to the team, yes, exactly. I know, heartbreaking. And drama. Yep. I might have to dig that interview out, because he definitely said some things off the record, which I can't remember right now. But he also found a way to find his words again on the record, and has, some feelings as to why he was unable to continue after what seemed to be a successful Toronto season. But anyway, maybe you'll have to join the Patreon posse to hear that. But anyway, but what we were talking about is, what was the value added of that kind of training camp? Because one of the things that was a value added was Daryl Watts, we know, joined the team mid-season and didn't have her full hockey stride until later in the season. Right. And one of the things that camp did for Toronto is that it gave Daryl Watts a place to get more reps in immediately after, or as close to after the season, so that she wasn't losing time like the way she did before. So those are reasons that you can do dev camps and why you want to bring in people from your roster to dev camps. Then there is what you're talking about, which didn't happen with goaltending, it sounds like, where you also want to give a player an opportunity to be seen by other teams. But there's not a combine. We don't have these kind of development camps with any consistency in women's hockey. And so I think it'll be interesting now because, at least in theory, and the whole reason we got here as women's hockey, right, is because this is supposed to be the #1 league. So now this league has an opportunity to, if it truly wants to be competitive, I do think giving opportunity for free agent signings, camp invites, you know, you never know what you're going to find. I mean, Yanni Gourde, right, is a centerman for the Seattle Kraken now, has 2 Stanley Cups and was undrafted, you know, just as an example. Like, there's so many examples across sports of undrafted people coming into camp and making it undeniable. Or what you talked about with Corrine Schroeder coming into camp and being able to restructure their contract. And that's powerful too. So if we're pro CBA, which we know that we are on this here podcast, on the Founding Four podcast, that's part of it. And you want to make these things work. Now, the criticisms of the PWHL in the inaugural season is how much was understood by the players and the Players Association going into this. Because you and I also read the CBA, the unofficial one and the official one, and I don't recall there being anything about dev camps in there.
No, there wasn't. And again, this is something that it's an 8-year CBA. You know, that's a long time to not think about developing your talent. You know, I think we've
even reserves, right?
Yeah.
You know, that wasn't fully structured.
Right, exactly. Exactly. It wasn't either. So it just kind of came out of nowhere. So it's kind of going to be like a situation where, and again, we've already seen situations too where, you know, the PWHL is just kind of changing their minds as they go along in terms of contract restructuring, in terms of everything like that. So it's like, okay, is this an actual improvement, or is this just the PHF with a CBA involved? And I say that because the PHF operated on those guidelines again. So if this is supposed to be a step up, where's the step? Is it like 3 inches off the ground? Because that's where we're at right now. So
yeah, and it's all relative, right? And what we can say, I think, what I'll say matter-of-factly before I offer my opinion is that the CBA is written, and we've talked about this on our live streams before, in a way where there's some flexibility, right? Like, it'll say things like, to be discussed between the PWHL and the PWHLPA in the future, or to be determined by, you know, a conversation. And so while those things are in there, that gives me at least a little bit of hope, because there's some leeway and there's some understanding that things are, with a short runway, there are things that are going to come up that you're going to need to deal with that maybe you didn't deal with before you ratified.
Right.
Is that the best? Is that the best that you could do? I'm assuming yes. Is that the most ideal situation? My opinion is personally no, but at least that's in there. However, this is where then we have to, I think it can easily come into question where the CBA does the most work. Is it working right now for players who are trying to make the league through some of these less obvious pathways? I would say no. So that means that by default, it's working for players that are in the CBA, that being their players that are making a minimum of $80K, players that were signed prior to free agent, you know, players that were not extended compassionate circumstance waivers. You know, that's what I mean by the players, not like individual Sarah Nurse, you know, Marie-Philippe Poulin. I'm talking about like kind of player identities, or really the circumstances.
Yeah, although, yeah, in terms of sheer probability, the majority of them are also national team players. So, and that can't be ignored. I think that's kind of where we're at. It's that part of it can't be ignored, and I think that's kind of where a lot of people's frustration comes with it. Skylar and Maddie are always fighting in these comments. I live.
Yeah, exactly, and those are things we just don't know right now.
Right,
and it's in theory, is it okay? Is it air quotes okay that we don't know this? I don't know.
That's the thing, is that like there are people who. How do I want to say this? How do I want to say this in a way that's not going to burn everything down? Because I actually don't want to choose chaos right now. I know, shocking. There are people who I have seen kind of critique prior leagues at every turn for every decision they may or may not make. And then those same people turn around after demanding better and demanding more, demanding a higher level from a professional league. Those same people then turn around and excuse the missteps and the mistakes and the omissions and the good enoughs and say, well, it's just year one. That to me doesn't fly, because at the end of the day, if you're going to posit yourself as something that is best for all players and something that is going to be so many steps up and so many leagues beyond the prior leagues, I am then going to hold you to a higher standard. And I keep saying this. I am going to hold you to the standard that you purported yourself to be at. If that is what you are claiming to be, then you better meet it. And if you don't meet it, I'm going to have shit to say. And I don't care who doesn't like it. I don't care who thinks I'm being unfair, because this is exactly where you posited yourself to be. So if you can't meet me here, don't complain about what's down here. Simple as that.
Yeah, I love this. You can't have it both ways, and your Gracely way is smaller. I mean, yeah, the goodwill, you know, and these are valid questions. I mean, these are questions that we ask of the NHLPA when they investigate, right? And it's been 100+ years of that league. Themselves. Right. Yeah. Not of the PA, just in fairness. It's not, the PA has not existed for 100 years. The league has existed for 100 years. The PA is probably 30, 40.
I want to say it's like about my age. I want to say it's like 35, maybe. I'm not 35. But I'm not 35 yet.
Think it was the late 70s, early 80s, somewhere. Anyway, I'll do research on the NHL some other time. But yeah, something like that. But again,
I was ask Alexa.
hey Alexa, Grushow or no?
You're gonna make her go off and be like, I'm not sure I understand you.
Yeah. Anyway, not important for right now. But the like, I think I don't know what the answers are, and I think that's also like, there are things that I don't like. That doesn't mean that they're not gonna work. Just because I don't like something, that's another thing that the greater WoHo community, I'd love us to like reach a level of healing where we can say, I don't like it, but that doesn't mean that it's not it's not gonna work.
Right. Or, you know, like,
there's like, I hated the change to the Metropolitan Riveters. I don't subscribe to that, but it happened.
I hated them all. Like, it doesn't mean that it's not gonna work. I mean, it didn't work, but you know, I
mean, we're not always right. I mean, a lot of times we are, but
people can be wrong. It's fine.
Even us.
But that's exactly it. Yeah, I mean, rarely, but it happens. But no, I think there are things that are like, you know.
Yo, Tell me why my sister sent me a picture because she lives in New Jersey. My sister Alexis, she sent me a picture. She's like, "Yo, did you know about this?" Now this is after the merger, and I was like, before she texted her message, so she just sent me the picture. I was like, "Oh, you're at what is
American
it, American
Dream.
Dream?" She's like, "Oh yeah, you know about this?" I was like, "Girl, drama." She was like, "What?" I was like, "Yup. Apparently they're getting sued now." The Girl, you didn't see that? Like, apparently,
No.
I thought I saw this was a while ago, but like American Dream is salty that the Riveters up and left because there went nothing else there. So now they got the wave pool and no hockey.
Bruh.
The mall drama. I was like, girl, I was telling my sister, girl, there's drama. She was like, what? I was like, yup. Crazy. Daisy, the New York Brooklyn Riveters. Exactly. How hard is that? At that point,
New York Brooklyn Riveters.
New York Brooklyn.
As hard as it is to admit
that has more syllables.
As hard as it is to admit that the PWHL is the New York team is playing in Bridgeport, apparently. Like, come on. Anyway, my point with all of this. What's that?
They have some games at UBS, right?
I don't know about you. Oh, they do.
Which I think is it on that part of Long Island where you can literally take a ferry from Connecticut to Long Island? Like, I feel like that's how far in Long Island. I have no idea.
Hold please.
We're gonna do because in my mind I was like, oh, maybe that's why they're playing.
I think they're playing at the same arena that the Bridgeport Sound Tigers play at. I think.
Correct. But then UBS is where the New York Islanders now play, but it's like deep in the cut, right?
It's in Elmont.
Is that Belmont's cousin? I don't know.
It kind of is. It's located. Okay.
We're so basic in New York.
This is reading from Wikipedia. UBS Arena is a multi-purpose indoor arena located within Belmont Park in Elmont, New York.
Girl, what? I was joking. I didn't know it was real.
Edge of Nassau County.
Okay, it's in Nassau County.
Yeah, so it's at the edge of Nassau County. It's not far from where Nassau Coliseum is. It's literally down the road. But there is the thing is the Bridgeport ferry goes to Port Jeff Station, and I think it's like a half hour or so to Hempstead Turnpike, if I'm not mistaken. Don't quote me on that. It's been a minute. I've never taken the ferry myself. I only ever know about it because people
don't know
it all the time when the Owl Planet Nassau.
Michelle J might be the one to ask about this. If I recall correctly, she's done the travel across the ferry before. Might have to look into that, but it might literally be easier to take a ferry from either Long Island across to Bridgeport to get to these games than to go through New York City. And these are weekday games.
Was Barclays fully gooked? Like,
girl,
considering the time of season, yeah, it probably is.
I mean, it might be, but also apparently hockey fans really hated hockey at Barclays. I saw a hockey game there. Now, I didn't really know what I was looking for, but like hockey fans hated the Barclays experience. I was like, I see ice. I don't know. Look fine to me. I feel like it had to be, it can't be worse than when they put soccer games on a baseball field and then you have someone trying to like kick a corner kick, but they have to like maneuver, like you can only kick if you're either left, like you kick with your left or your right depending on what side, because there's literally no space. Like, I don't understand. That should be illegal. I don't want soccer on a baseball field if it doesn't actually fit, which it looks wrong. It looks wrong.
I mean,
so I don't know.
I don't know what the alternative was, Barclays or like playing in the middle of an empty lot and not on Hempstead Turnpike, because that's exactly what the fuck Nassau Coliseum is. Oh, it's in the middle of like nothing. But
yeah, there's nothing out there.
Anyway,
the 8th time ever. Okay, so we went through the rosters. We have our favorites, obviously players and rosters. we're gonna see how it all goes down. I unfortunately will not be able to participate in the inaugural puck drop, but it's going to be at Mattamy Athletic Center, which we were at last year.
I'm very excited about that. I'm very excited. It's actually in Toronto. It's actually Toronto, downtown Toronto.
Looking at you, Rain, I remember those days in Tacoma. That was crazy. They do the same thing here in Tulsa. It's not fun. It's so bad. It's so
bad. Why put your arena in the middle of nowhere? Like,
yeah, I don't know.
But also, why put it downtown if you're not gonna put affordable housing near it? Anyway, there's so many things I can talk about when it comes to stadium construction.
We're gonna have to put that on our urban planning podcasts.
Well, here's
the intersect of urban planning and professional sports.
But this is stuff that we got to think about, down the line. If the PWHL gets as big as they're hoping to get, if they are going to be it for professional women's hockey, these are things that we're going to have to start thinking about: is urban planning and development, and how public funds come into it. Hopefully they fucking don't. But
listen, let me just say it this way. That would require women's hockey getting away from the help me, I'm poor era.
True.
Because I still think, and we talked about it at the top of the show, and we are going to wrap soon, but we talked about it at the top of the show that a part of them playing in some arenas that have the trapezoids, some that don't, and all of this stuff is because it's what was available.
Right.
So will that change down the line? Hopefully. I mean, we started to see that there was someone designated when it came to facilities for the PHF. We also know, and I talk about this on my Seattle Kraken podcast, but there are arenas like Climate Pledge Arena or their practice facility, the Seattle Kraken at Kraken Community Iceplex, where they're actually building out locker rooms for women coaches. So it's not them in a broom closet or things like that. Mm-hmm. They're future proofing places like Climate Pledge Arena, which also has a WNBA team. So they already have 2 designated areas for basketball and hockey. Like, you have to start thinking of those things. I think there are a lot of things, including, we didn't even get into uniforms on this episode, but a lot of things are short-sighted. And I understand with the short runway, but again, the short runway wouldn't have been my choice, so it's a little hard to let go of.
Short runway was self-implemented. Like, you put the bicycle, you put the stick in your own bicycle spoke. Like, you were the one who implemented this. Nobody was asking for this to happen on January 1st except you.
Correct.
So at this point, again, and this is again where I have so many issues, because it's like, ultimately, as much as you want to say that you're for the players, and as much as you want to say that this is going to be better for the players, there are still, and there's some things that have improved. I'm not going to sit here and bitch and moan about everything. There are things that actually, have improved. The communications, it's up and down. When I was in Utica, I did have a very easy time figuring out where to go, and everything was structured well. I'm not going to sit here and lie and say that it wasn't. Was it perfect? No, but it never really is. Let's be real, especially in an arena like that, where it's like you're right next to the rink, and like the next teams are going on for their scrimmage, and you're trying to get post game audio as pucks are flying around and hitting the glass behind you. Like, whatever, that happens. But I think that it's very telling, and it's very interesting what people are willing to let slide with this league that they weren't necessarily letting slide with previous incarnations.
Yeah, for sure. We see Mike here. Hey, Mike, thanks for joining us. Any word on TV stream yet, i.e. where? No, haven't heard that. I know some of the old broadcasters have been reaching out and honestly more so kind of keeping me in the loop of what they're hearing, but it doesn't seem like any of that, at minimum, it's not ready to go public. That is something that I asked Jana Hefford about. I spoke to her, I guess almost 2 weeks ago now. And so those were things that she was expecting that we would hear back about soon, but we haven't yet. So now that we are just about a week, right, away from the end of development camp, I hope that, with any of the off ramping that they had for that event, rosters being official now, that we'll start to get more of those details. So yeah, that's a good question. And, to your point, Angelica, and again, I mentioned at the top of the show, something that I'm working on as part of the Professional Hockey Writers Association with our women's hockey chapter is to get some of this solidified. And the league has been, and I had a conversation with the league. I think there are some things which, after hearing where they're coming from, I kind of understand why things went down the way they did, and made a point to say, but here are the gaps that we're hoping to fill, because as much as we want everything to be professional on the ice, in the community, at the front office level, with the CBA, that goes part and parcel with the professionalism and the expectations that are set together alongside a media core that's going to cover the league. So
right.
Yeah.
And it's so like, it's a thing where, again, if you're setting a standard, you got to meet that standard. If you're the ones who are saying, this is going to be better, then it actually has to be better. And you also have to put thought and planning into it, which is, again, why I felt that extending the timeline would have been so beneficial. Because number one, if you knew that you didn't have anything in place, again, I'm going to say this until I'm blue in the face. If you knew that you didn't have anything in place when it came to the branding, when it came to the jerseys, when it came to this, that, and the third, with your branding and with your communications, you shouldn't have done it. Second, if you're going to then try to put yourself on this time crunch, again, you're just shooting yourself in the foot. Extending the timeline would not have hurt anybody. This is more, I feel at this point, it's more hubris than anything else. And I'm not sitting here and saying that doesn't mean that the camp wasn't a success or anything like that. There were definitely things that were positive, and there are definitely things that are a net success, but that doesn't mean that there aren't some major criticisms that still need to be addressed. And there's nothing wrong with addressing them and making sure that you have that right. And there's nothing wrong with us demanding as media and as also fans, because we are fans of the game. There's nothing wrong with us demanding that you figure your shit out before a certain date.
It would be nice. It would be nice. Well, all things to be determined, like the schedule, like the broadcast, or the schedule is done, but we don't have the broadcast and streaming. I know that it was said that Stan Kasten, the goal is to have as much on broadcast TV, but the minimum will be that everything will be streamed. That's at least how I interpreted what he said. I think the quotes got a little out of control from what I was seeing on my social media feeds, but that's what I understood it to be. It's like, of course we want it on broadcast. We want a broadcast deal. And for the first year, we'll probably do a streaming of some sort. So that's what I got from that. So we'll see what happens. I hope we hear and see some familiar names and voices on the broadcast. I can tell you, I really don't know what that looks like for me personally, but again, I'm just eager to see what the league gets going come January 1st, but we're going to be here to talk about it on the Founding Four podcast. As I mentioned, if you are a member of our Patreon posse, make sure, yes, you check your messages. I'll be sending one out probably tomorrow. Definitely by Friday, but we're doing quarterly giveaways. It's things that I've either been gifted or that I collect along the way, tchotchkes and stuff like that. And I was just in Portland visiting the sports bra and working with Jenny on an event to do a screening of Ice Queens. So our next quarterly giveaway, which will be in March, you'll have an opportunity, first come, first serve, to grab some gear from and swag from the sports bra for being a monthly subscriber to our Patreon posse.
You never say it right now. You're never gonna say it another way now.
Never. We have to be
So,
fake bougie French.
Let's talk rivalry.
Yeah, we want to talk rivalry series because you can, for those who don't know the sports bra concept, you can watch any women's sport there at all times. Respectfully, the men's sports do not get played at the sports bra, so it's all women's sports all the time.
No, disrespectfully, you can find 10 other bars that play fucking men's sports.
Truly you can. Oh man, I had the baby back ribs and the nachos. So good. Highly recommend. Make sure you eat the slaw if you try the baby back ribs. They're a family recipe from Jenny's mom. But yes, so head over, check out the menu at the Sports Bra, and then you can watch these games coming up. Rivalry series. Angelica, what do we got going on?
We have, of course, rivalry series. We have 2 games. One being played in Kitchener, I believe. The other played in Sarnia, Ontario. And of course, the rivalry series, for those who are uninitiated, which should be very few of you or to none of you, is the ongoing annual series leading up to Worlds and Olympic years between the US and Canada. And as I have like a little, I got like in my little pouch here. So if I salivate a little bit, I'm sorry. But anyway, so we've got a couple of new faces for both the US and for Canada. And we'll start with Team Canada because this is one that I'm really excited as a newly christened NCAA writer. Jen Gardner is getting a look in her Team Canada debut. Out of Ohio State, leading scorer for Ohio State. The Ohio State University, sorry. Leading scorer for the Buckeyes. She is their captain. She's so much fun to watch. And I think she'll be a lot of fun for this Team Canada squad. I believe there was one other name. Sorry, I'm pulling it up now. But in terms of USA,
yeah, Layla Edwards, we know.
Layla Edwards, yes. 2 players. 2 other players for Team Canada. We have 2 out of Clarkson, Anne Trukowski and Nicole Gosling as well. Clarkson, of course, right now 5th ranked in the nation, according to USCHO.com and USA Today. So excited to see what they do. For USA, we have Kirsten Sims and Allie Simpson making their debuts. A lot of fun. Allie Simpson, I believe, has kind of made her way up in the national team program. So getting to see her, I think, is going to be a lot of fun. And I believe she is a Colgate girl. So that's really exciting. Colgate is kind of on the ups in the last couple of seasons as well for the NCAA. So, and she is one of their key players. So that'll be a lot of fun to watch her. And yeah, I mean, right now, Canada is facing an 0-2 deficit. The United States took both games in the US last month. And now it's Canada's turn to try and claw their way back up. And we'll see what happens. Emma Smashmeyer just announced that she will not be playing in this month's games. I don't know if it's I don't think it's a very serious thing. But there was a little bit of a tweak there for in terms of, I guess, injury-wise. So she's just maintaining right now. And
then I'm sorry, did you mention also that Casey O'Brien was just added for the
Casey O'Brien was just added to Team USA, yes. I did forget about that, so I apologize. But Casey O'Brien,
it's all good. Because we just got that news today, so.
Yeah, out of Wisconsin. So
yes.
number 3 ranked, I think, at this point, Badgers. They were number 1 for a very long time, and then Ohio State said "fuck you," and
what's happening in the CHA. I mean, every year, but I really think that Ohio State. I really love what their program is trying to build there. Obviously already have a championship and really just pushing the needle. I mean, we talk a lot in pro hockey about how none of the versions that we've ever seen have been perfect, but what we can say is that they've pushed each other along. And I think that's what you see sharpening iron in the CHA pretty much every year. So I think it's awesome.
Absolutely. They're just setting a new standard there. I mean, nobody really even comes close to WCHA when it comes to what they're doing. I actually have an article brewing on that for the Ice Garden, doing a little bit of
I mean, don't sleep on Hockey East, not just because I'm calling some of their games again this year, but
or
truthfully,
the ECAC.
Yeah.
I will say, no, there's no shade to any of these other conferences, but again, I feel like, and the WCHA is coming up on its 25th season. It is in the middle of its 25th season now, so that's really worth celebrating. Like we said, it's 25 years of setting a standard. And I think the Midwest in general just does hockey a lot differently.
Right, and it's also worth noting that I guess a couple of seasons ago now, because it was right before the Olympics, but they are the only women's only conference. So so WCHA was anyway. There's a whole now the teams on the men's side that used to be in that same conference, they've switched over to other conferences. So the WCHA, or you can just short form it now, the CHA is a women's only hockey conference, and so that's unique in its own right. But anyway, we're gonna dabble into the NCAA as well, but we wanted to make sure to let you know about the rivalry series. Definitely check that out if you're in Portland ever, whether it's rivalry series or not. Go check out Jenny at the Sports Bra. Tell her Black Rosie Media sent you. I feel like you'll at least get a hug. I don't know about a discount, but we'll work on that for you. No, but it's a really dope place, and we really, and I said this at the event, but I think it's important to highlight everything in the ecosystems around sports, particularly those around women's sports, that have allowed us, I don't like using allowed, that have given us an opportunity to create extended families, kind of friendships that exist beyond states, beyond country borders. And I mean, it's just been amazing. So the Sports Bra is one of those places in real life where a lot of us can connect. I would say the same thing about Rough and Tumble. I've got some Rough and Tumble stickers behind me. Yeah. Rough and Tumble is in Seattle, and it's a sports pub for women. They don't exclusively play women's sports, but I do know for a fact that if you head over there and you ask Jen to bring down Black Rosie, she will definitely do it, because she did it for me last time I was in Seattle. Had the Black Rosie signed autographed jersey right there while I was sitting down. So highly recommend these spaces, and hopefully we'll continue to explore more. And let's support these companies, let's support these places, and hold them to it, and other pubs as well. Yeah, we want to watch the rivalry series. Absolutely. Yeah, we want to watch the inaugural puck drop of the PWHL at our local pub. We pay, our beer money just like everybody else. And we don't need to see reruns of the 1996 World Series. We can watch live action women's sports. So I love it. I'm here for it.
Absolutely. And it's at an all-time high. I mean, coverage of women's sports alone has increased dramatically in recent years. There's been so much more demand for it. I mean, we didn't really touch on it, but season tickets for Toronto sold out in like a day. And tickets for Ottawa are going insanely fast as well, from what I'm hearing. There is demand for it. It doesn't matter what Joe Schmo sitting on a stupid bar stool in Cheektowaga has to say about it.
And here's the thing that I'm going to say about that. What I think is important about how fast things are selling out is because what we know also is that things are always arbitrarily set to smaller doses when it comes to women and women in sports. But we show time and time again that we're going to show up, and you don't need to, you don't need any more proof. Like, there's already proof there. And even with, like you said, the coverage is expanding. It's been about 10 percentage points in the last couple of years, but that still leaves us at less than 15% of sports coverage going to women's sports, which is wild. a 10 percentage point swing and we're still under 15%. Just think about that. So that's why, like I said, took a little time away just to make sure I was the best version of me. But Black Rosie Media has some things planned definitely for the hockey season. We're coming up on another Olympic cycle. So help us continue to do what we do in the space.
Absolutely. You said it better than I could for sure. I tweeted about this earlier. There have been times in this year that I've, really thought about stepping away and really thought about kind of recollecting myself and regrouping, especially losing the pro sports team that we had here in Buffalo, with the pro women's hockey team, I should say, that we had here in Buffalo. It took a lot out of me, and it took a lot for me to kind of figure out what my new path was going to be. Now I feel like I'm kind of there. I'm still working on it for sure, because it is a big switch, especially having covered one league for 8 years. But I really do, I appreciate the platform that I have here, the platform that I have at the Ice Garden. And I appreciate every single one of you who is watching and commenting and, putting your alerts on and tweeting at us and, adding to the discussion, really makes this worthwhile for sure. As much as it is worthwhile to see the players thriving and being excited about this new league, because a lot of them are. The atmosphere in Utica was really, really positive, and overall there's just a lot of excitement, which I think is great. As great as it is to see the players so happy and so stoked for what's to come next, it's just as rewarding to have these conversations with you guys. So thank you.
Yes, indeed. And feel the same way about you always, hermana. So thank you for coming along this winding road with me. And we're going to get there. We're going to get there. Because as much as, again, big gains in women's sports overall, seeing a 10% swing, but we know not very much of that 10% is thinking about melanated creators of color, creatives that speak multiple languages and English not being their first. I mean, we can go down the list, creatives, or thinking about creating content that is also accessible. Those are things that I'm learning, still very much learning at Black Rosie Media, and we always try to give and highlight. So that's why we have to continue pushing the needle. So anyway, I know all of y'all know this. That's why you join us here for our long rants. 2 hours. I knew we were going to be on here for a minute, but it's been a while, and there were 6 teams, and we had to cover it all, and give a little of our spicy women's hockey takes throughout the way. But okay, so we're going to talk in another week or so, get us ready for January 1st puck drop. And we still want to do our WoHo retro series. We still haven't done season 3. And we're still hoping to have a guest. So make sure you stay on the lookout for that. But as always, I say this on my other hockey podcast, be kind to yourself, be kind to one another. And let's keep pushing the needle when it comes to women's hockey. Make sure you're reading Angelica, of course, on Black Rosie Media, as well as the Ice Garden for the NCAA. And stay tuned for the games I'll have for Hockey East at the top of the year. All right, good night, everyone. We'll see you again soon. Bye.
Bye.